What up, what up?
What's good, man?
What's going on, brother? Chilling. Another dank session.
Another day, another dank sesh.
So, as always, what you smoking?
This was a Gelato 33 Zebra Cake from Stone City Genetics.
Nice. All right, so I'm smoking caramel grape donuts today, man.
Nice.
But I tell you something, man. We're not having any problems or issues with connection
Oh,
since we both moved
looks
rooms.
good.
So
Looks
I
good, though.
wonder. Hey, that's all that fire growing in the room.
Dog, it could be anything. Dude, this Instagram setup is just super fragile, man. It just doesn't seem to be the best platform for this. But to be fair, man, it's the easiest to just set up and run, so
You know,
yeah, which is
I,
kind of weird. Like I'm gonna call my cable company this week too and just see what their deal is, because I don't feel like I'm getting like the service I'm paying for. Like I'm paying for gigabit. I just did a speed test. I'm getting like 150 meg down, which isn't bad, but like
yeah.
it's not what I'm paying for.
For sure. So everybody that's tuning in each and every Wednesday to Dank Talk, we want to appreciate you while we work through the technical difficulties. And today's going to be another Dank show for you. So today's topic is we're going to do beginning tips for breeders. Beginning tips for breeders. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys that are in the chat, probably doing their own thing and know a little bit about breeding, but our goal is to put this on the internet so that people can search and find, two of the legends talking dank about growing and breeding your own seeds. So first topic we're going to start off with is start with stable, proven genetics. What you got on that, Turk?
Oh yeah, man. So like first off, man, who's a breeder? Right? Who should be breeding seeds? So the truth is, man, anybody that's got two strains that they're in love with should make some seeds. Like, the truth is, not all genetics are created equal. So when you're trying to figure out what you want to cross, as much as it's tempting to just take your two favorite strains, and I've said this 100 times, if all you can do is take your two favorite strains and cross them together, you got a strain. You got your own new cross. But the best thing for anybody that's trying to make seeds for profit or for business or to make a business out of selling seeds, starting with genetics that are legit, that are going to breed well, that aren't herm prone, that aren't going to cause a whole lot of problems, and that's pretty clutch. And kind of when I look back on decisions that I made early on when I first started breeding full time, those were some of the best decisions that I made as far as like which strains I wanted to work with, which strains now down the road I'm still working with, which ones have kind of proven themselves over and over and over. But yeah, man, starting with genetics that starting with genetics that you trust, starting with genetics that are legitimate is probably your best bet. And it's going to avoid you a shitload of problems down the road.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And I want to touch on something that you started off with. Who should make seeds? So don't get caught up in the hype and everyone calling people pollen chuckers and this, that, and the third, right? You have the ability, you have the knowledge. You put two plants together, you make them make babies for you. At the end of the day, it's what you like, right?
Yep.
So with proven genetics, in the world of the digital world we live in today, you can go back with lineage and find timestamps or pictures or information on genetics and what is deemed proven stable genetics. Do your research. The reason why I think it's important to do your research and not just, like Terp say, put any two plants together is because at the end goal, we're all trying to create something special. And if people aren't taking the breeding serious and just putting anything out there, then it's that much harder to find a stable plant or a gem in the rough, because we're working through people's non-work, you know, and it makes us work twice as harder. So, number one, start with proven genetics, and two, if you want to make seeds, take it serious and find your information out and make some seeds. Put them
One of
out.
the things that we always talk about, whether it be on the shows, whether it be, you know, you and I, or whether it be other breeders, is breeding with a purpose. So going into it, not necessarily just banging shit together, but really having an idea of what you're looking for, right? Whether that be particular flavors, whether that be, you know, strains that make great hash, strains that yield well. Like, go into each project with some sort of an idea of what's important to you. Like, have a purpose. Don't necessarily just bang shit together to bang shit together, or because it's hype, or because you see other people doing it. Like, try to have some sort of defined, I'd like to accomplish X or Y
Right.
before you get started.
So mine, you know, I have experience breeding with my caramel grape donuts, and I created something for my wife and I. With the caramel grape donuts, I've always been a fan of grapey terps. Grape terp, in my opinion, is like no other. It's not supposed to be in your weed, you know? That's what it feels like. So, but my wife, she's more of a gassy. She likes gas. And I searched and found a pheno that had that grape gas taste and smell. Like, so have a goal at the end of the day of what you achieve to accomplish. And like Terp said in the previous episode, if you like it, if you enjoy it, chances are somebody else are going to appreciate your hard work and your energy you put into it. It's kind of like the old saying goes in cannabis, what you put into the plants, you'll give back. So definitely.
Yep. And see, there's so many people right now, you know, just one debate that we keep seeing pop up and pop up and pop up is about skunk, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people that feel like there's kind of two camps. There's people that think that skunk weed is dead and somehow disappeared and this or that or the other. And the truth is, you know, if you feel like that's the case, then you should be the one out there chasing that down and trying to make sure it makes it into the next generation of seeds. Like, if it's a profile or a flavor or a particular plant that you love for some reason, then by making seeds of it, you're going to guarantee that it makes it into the next generation, right? And to the next group of people who may find that whatever trait that it is valuable.
Hey, I got a good question, kind of off topic, but a little on topic. So, you say people say that the skunk terp is dead, right? Well, what about this generation that's growing up now that's never experienced the skunk that you experience? So, how are they to create a skunk when they've never had it? Because I'm gonna be honest, I've never had skunk. I've had what people call skunk, but I've never had the 90s skunk which everyone talks about. So
we could do an hour on this. I mean, we could do an hour on just all of the bullshit and the drama and the lies and the marketing and the horse shit that's all been around the roadkill skunk or the skunk argument,
yeah.
right? So the reality is, the reason that a lot of the plants that people are after didn't make it this far are because they were herm prone. The earliest skunks were tall, lanky, heavy sativas. They weren't really fitted to grow under indoor lighting. Most of what most people remember about old school skunk was generally shit before we started bringing all the weed plants indoors. So it was, you know, the earliest people were banging seeds together, you know, in a hybridization form. And you started to see the first hybrids. And this is where a lot of the strains today that became the backbone of genetics, your hazes, your skunks, you know, all the way back to the Northern Lights, like a lot of those old school strains, that became the kind of cornerstone of cannabis breeding as we know it today. Everything, you know, has exploded from there. from those older, you know, a lot of it was old Vietnam vets, whether they be in Northern California, whether it be, you know, some of the people that were going over to India and doing the hash trails and bringing stuff back from the, you know, the late 60s, early 70s. And that became what we knew as like the hazes and the skunks and the ties. And, you know, a lot of that was seeds that were imported from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So there's a reason that a lot of those plants in that form don't exist today. And
I'll
it's
tell you
because
another reason why I think they don't exist. Because if skunk is as skunky as people say, you got to remember back in the early 90s, 2000s, like we're growing in times of prohibition.
that's not really the case, because there's still the thing that I do want to address is that there's still skunky weed out there.
Yeah.
Like the notion that any profile disappeared or isn't here anymore or just magically got wiped off the planet,
It's
that's
impossible.
silly shit. It's definitely here. Those profiles are still out there in seed form. There's tons of skunky cuts.
Yeah.
Like anybody that says it's dead is probably not running that many different strains. Because in the last couple of years, I've had two strains that were like, you know, you go, that's really skunky. There's some really skunky, skunk pissy like, you know. But the problem is the specific thing that everybody seems to be chasing is roadkill skunk. Whatever strain they remember, whatever they remember from back in the day that they feel isn't around anymore, that plant probably isn't. That plant probably is not around anymore, and there's probably a reason. But there are other profiles that are identical or just, you know, they're pretty much the same profile. They're still out there, man. They didn't just magically disappear. They got hybridized, and the best parts of them stuck around. So there's still tons of skunk plants out there and skunky profiles. But the notion that, like, anything just magically disappeared with one plant or with one cut, that's not really how the gene pool works. Because as soon as there was a skunk, there were other people taking that skunk and making cuts with it, making different strains with it. Nothing stays in a vacuum.
You got to remember, too, just because you and I are growing the same plant, we're growing it in different environments, and things will express differently all the time. You know what I mean? But I want to get it back. I want to get it back on topic, bro. So taking notes. When you plan on breeding, you want to take notes. You want to have copious amounts of notes. From seed all the way up until flower. First notes I take is the day I put it in the ground. It might sound like something obsolete or not important, but I want to know who breaks ground first. I want to see how long it takes for this seed to pop, right? Next thing I want to know is vigor. I want to know who's vigorous. You know, without the fan, with the fan, who stands up to the test of time? You know, this is information that's going to come back and help you when you get that text or that DM at 8 p.m. and, hey, man, I was looking at your caramel grape donuts. I want to know about this. With those notes, you know, by then you probably smoked it so much you know it like the back, grown it so much you know it like the back of your hand. But those notes come in handy when you enter information into Seed Finder. Seed Finder asks for lineage, all type of copious notes, you know, that you want to drop. Information is key when it comes to genetics. That's one reason why I fell in love with Terpene, because I was so able to contact him and he tell me about his plants. I think Terp gives some of the most descriptive profile terps when he explains his genetics, and I love it. So, yeah.
I try, man. So, like, one of the things that you kind of touched on right there that I think is clutch, that a lot of people are going to miss their first round of making seeds, is that as much as things like flavor and terps and, you know, and resin are all very important.
Yes.
The things that often get missed are things like vigor, are things like which plants exhibit not only the fastest growth, but the most growth in a manner that's towards the direction that you're looking for. So like I said, if our goal at the end of the day is hash plants, we don't necessarily always want plants that are going to be super stretchy. But 8 times out of 10, those are going to be the plants with the biggest trichomes, because most
Right.
of the time, your more sativa-leaning plants are the ones with the bigger trikes. So the things that you're going to miss your first go-round in making seeds are little things, like how vigorous, which seeds pop first, which ones grow the hardiest, which ones can hold out the longest before showing sex.
Yeah.
Once you make your first
Yep.
cross, which mothers make the best seeds, because some
Mm-hmm.
mothers are going to put out little tiny seeds,
Yep.
and some are going to put out really big seeds. Some are going to take forever to put seeds out and make them finished. So, like, there's a lot of little, and then health stuff, like pathogen resistance and being able to take, stress, and how do they deal with things like that. Those are the little things that most breeders on their first couple swings are probably going to miss, because you're looking at trichomes, and you're looking at height, and you're looking at flavor, and you're looking
Right.
at, all of the things that are really important. But that's kind of one of those things that you want to keep your eye out long term for, are kind of like what grows the fastest, what grows the hardiest, what can take the most shit,
Yeah.
what's not going to harm under the most stress,
Right.
and like you said, that's where taking notes is absolutely clutch, because each one of those
I'll give
plants is a unique thing.
I'll give you a prime example. I know a guy that has DJ Short going right now, DJ Short Blueberry, and he has about 4 or 5 different phenos, and just this one pheno, everyone's getting fed the same, everyone's getting the same treatment, but it's just expressing and not liking the regimen and what it's doing, and it just shows the fact that stuff needs to be documented like that. Like, well, I know some, but not all. So that's why I say document, take notes.
People hit me up all the time, and that's a common question, is like, what kind of newts does it need? What kind of feed do I need? If you have a plant that has a super specific nutrient need in order for it to be happy,
Yeah.
that's not the plant you want to breed with.
Right.
You want a plant that you can literally dump anything on it and it still looks like it wants more, even when it ain't the right stuff. You want plants that aren't super finicky.
Right.
You want to avoid plants that show particular, like, I'm kind of old school in the sense that, like, if it showed weird leaf mutations, if it auto flowers, if it shows any signs of herms, there's better boys out there, there's better girls out there, there's better stuff to find. Like, find a better parent. If that's all you have, I mean, it is what it is. But like I said, that kind of plays to having some purpose in your cross. Because if you literally have 2 beans and that's all you end up with, and you just want to make a cross, that is what it is. But if you have the selection and you can do the selection, find healthy plants. Find plants that don't have some ugly leaf mutation or some, unless the mutation is just freakish resin or freakish oil production, find a better plant. Find a healthier plant.
I don't care how unique looking a plant looks. If it doesn't produce at the end, it's pointless to me. I feel like it's too much money to be wasted on a plant that's not going to perform. And I'll tell you this, that's something with new growers though, man. New growers like to hold on to plants too long instead of learning how to, hey, he's not it. You can't force it. You know what I mean? Like, that's I don't have this back. I don't have this on my notes, but it's something that just popped in my mind. If you have the amount of seeds to hunt through, do not be afraid to cull. Get that shit out of there, man. It's wasting your time. Because there's another plant that's doing just fine, in the same environment.
New growers, especially when you're in your first, we'll say, 100 plants you've ever run, you don't quite realize yet that there's always another girl out there, and she's probably hotter than the one that, that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Always be willing to acknowledge there's something better out there. So by popping a couple extra seeds each time you go, like, you're going to throw away plants.
Right.
That's got to become the norm, because if you get too attached to any plant, man, something's going to happen. It happens every time. And that's part of why we make seeds, is because shit happens. There's mistakes. There's so much, that can go wrong. But, like, the truth is, be willing to look further. If you've seen something that's great, assume there's something amazing there. If you've seen something amazing, assume there's something mind-blowing there. There's always a chance that there's another plant out there that's going to be better in the same seed set. But that doesn't necessarily mean, that you just kick plants that you love.
Yeah.
But be willing to acknowledge if something's not perfect, make something else. Find something else. Yeah.
All right. So next topic, bro. This one's a little debatable, shall I say? Practices on finding the best male.
So, so this is really not as complicated as people make it out to be. The thing is that most people, unless you just happen to jump straight into breeding with, your first 6 months in the grow game, most people don't know what a male looks like, couldn't even tell you, like, unless you happen to have one pop up in your room, you can eventually say, well, that doesn't look right. Like, I don't know what that is, but but most people, once again, your first 100 plants or so, you've never maybe seen a male. And a lot of people now are getting into growing with fem seeds.
Yeah.
So most people really in that, there are still males that can be found in fem seeds, but they're usually much more rare. And most people out of 10 seeds, most people out of 10 seeds are never going to see one. Yeah. So the truth is, as soon as you get into growing, the first thing you should learn is that there are boy plants and girl plants and what the two look like, because they don't look anything alike. So, I mean, we kind of started in the middle at what should have been the beginning. But to be fair, the first thing you need to do in breeding is figure out what a boy plant looks like and what a girl plant looks like. From there, figuring out what a great male looks like is kind of the same thing that you would look for in a female in generalities. So I want
to plug this in real quick too while we're talking about so you can download on Google the Marijuana Grow Bible. It has great information for beginners. So the Marijuana Grow Bible on Google, check that out. You can download a free PDF.
But it's the same thing that you would be looking for in a female. Structure, flower, odor. What does the male plant that produces look like? What does the bud structure of that look like? Though he doesn't produce buds, he still produces pollen sacs. Correct. And you still can see a lot in the structure of those as to what he's going to produce in a cross. Because if just picture in your head it not being balls, picture it being buds. And if it's a big, dense hunk of flowers, he's usually going to be pretty chunky. So, it's Adam Miko, not Solo. But yeah, dude, most people get kind of distracted by the fact that they're looking at a male and they don't really know what they're looking for. But if you rub a stem of a male and he stinks excessively, you can usually guess he's going to be a terp producer. Now, doesn't guarantee. We're kind of taking some binoculars and looking from afar, but you can use a little bit of hindsight or foresight and just say, I can tell you this is going to be, he's going to be a tall one because he got super tall. So he's going to bring that to the table. And, if he's got big clusters of of pollen sacs, it's going to probably produce big flowers.
Yeah, same here, man. When I look for my males, I just look for clusters, I look for smell, and I look for the average height in which I like my plants. Again, have a plan. You want to, in my opinion, I like to have my male slightly taller than the female. If I'm gonna do a normal type pollination. We'll get to the different type of pollinations a little later. But I like my male to stink. I like my male, when I walk by it and shake it, I just smell weed. It might not be terpy, but you know how if you grow plants, plants have a smell. When I shake that motherfucker, I want to smell stank.
Maybe cross them. No. The best thing then is to cross them, man, and to actually cross it to something that you know. And at that point, you have a little bit better idea. You're not guessing as much. You know what I'm saying?
I'll tell you something I've never seen that I've heard you're supposed to look out for when looking for a male. Have you ever seen what's called the super male? I've never seen it, in my opinion. I'm sorry. I
No,
just have to
what
be honest with you guys.
that?
You guys looking for
What is
seeds
that
with that's
supposed to
bred with a
be?
super male?
Because
That's
that sounds like some alpha female nonsense that another breeder was talking a couple years back. Where did you hear that, and what is that?
on YouTube, man. I've heard, just I research. So when I'm looking through videos on how to breed,
I've never heard that term before, so I'm not sure what
so
that
a super male
is.
is supposed to be a male that's huge clusters and it looks like a female because there's so much THC on it, so many crystals. I've never seen a male
Yeah,
produce.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That sounds like some term somebody on YouTube just made up. That's not like
Mm,
a real thing.
yeah,
And now here's the thing: when you find a male and this male checks all the boxes, you'll know, and you'll hold that fucker forever. And the difference becomes you're only gonna tell so much just by looking at him, right? Eventually you got to get them to work. You got to put them to stud. You got to take some females that you know breed well, that you know what they do, and you bring them in. And then you make some crosses, you run them out, and you see, the best of what it is and the worst of what it is. And in that, you really can determine, is this male worth, my time, his time, our time? Is this somebody I want to drag into making more projects with? Or is this just something that, is best left to the pile? You know what I'm saying? Like, at a
totally,
certain
totally.
amount, we always say it's either dank or it's not. And if it can't keep up and it can't check all the boxes, find another one that can.
Gotta go. All right, so we got a female, we got our male. Now it's time for them to get busy, right? So we're gonna talk about, like I said, methods of pollination. Okay, so the way I collect my pollen is I was taught from an old school grower in Spain. So I get a piece of glass, and I tip my male over. And once those pollen sacs start opening, those clusters that you see start opening, they start dropping pollen. And from there, I take a card, collect the pollen. You want to separate any type of plant matter that falls into your pollen. You want to separate it because usually plant matter holds moisture, right? Any type of moisture kills pollen. So you don't want to spray your plants, anything, while you're collecting pollen, right? There's also the normal sex way, right? You put a male and a female. Yeah, a male and a female. I'm not gonna go there. A male and a female in the same room, and they get busy,
I checked all
and
of the boxes on all of these. They get checked 18 plus. So they're going to get busy. We can talk about it. They're going to get busy, and they're going to do what they do.
yeah, and then you got storing pollen, right? So I store my pollen in the little seed containers, right? And I use the paintbrush method. So if I'm trying to be selective in branches and I still want to see this plant grow out, but I like what I see, I'll take my little vial, I'll take my little paintbrush, and very carefully I'll paint the calyxes of the plant. And that's called selective pollination, in my opinion. I call it selective pollination. Um, each has their benefits, right? You might have a plant to where you have two fire males you done found. Lucky you, lucky girl. You got your turf bomb and you got your lucky charms, two males, right? And you just got this sexy ass, caramel grape donut sitting there. Well, you can pollinate two branches and you can make her a freak.
So
You know what I mean?
let me
And
let me jump in real quick and kind of. There's a little bit to the collection process I kind of want to add, because
go
this
ahead.
is one I get a lot. People ask me a ton of times, and I at least want to put this one on video for once and for all. So my method is fairly similar. We do a lot of the same things. But what I kind of invested in was like a little, I think it cost me maybe $18 or $20 on eBay. It's just a little keef box that's got a screen, a lid, and a little drawer underneath it that's got glass. And what I'll do is, if I'm collecting, and it's not just a everybody bang type of thing, if I'm collecting pollen, I'll go in every day after the male starts throwing pollen, which is usually, he'll start producing sacs around week 2, week 3. He'll usually start dumping pollen about week 4, 5. By week 5, he's throwing pollen everywhere. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll shake branches over this little box. And what it does is it automatically sifts everything. And then when you pull the screen out, it's just raw dust pollen.
Nice.
Like,
Nice.
it's just like teeth. And, you know, you get something in like a 220 micron, and the 160 micron or smaller screen or bigger screen, and it keeps out any plant matter. Like you said, the first most important thing with dealing with pollen is to make sure all of the plant matter is out. The second most important part is drying. If you do not dry your pollen for at least 2 weeks in a cool, dry spot, not your refrigerator, not somewhere where there's wind blowing, somewhere that's cool and dry for 2 weeks before it goes into a jar, it will mold and it will ruin immediately. As soon as you put it into a jar wet, it's going to ruin immediately. Because like Max said, any moisture will ruin your pollen immediately. Immediately. Worthless. So after it's dry, then you can put it into like a vial or a jar. At that point, once it's dry, it's like flour. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me, do I like to mix mine down with flour? Because that's another old school thing that, like, back in the day, people did a lot.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, do you want to put flour all over your fucking weed plants?
Hey, bro, listen.
I don't.
I can attest. I learned from an old school grower in Spain. That shit works. It after it's dry, you have to stress it's dry already. But because remember, it only takes a single granule to pollinate a plant, right? So you taught me how to stretch it, you know? And in my opinion, it works. I've created many seeds that way. Now, do I do it now? No. Why? I don't know why I stopped doing it, but it works.
I'm not saying it doesn't work. I've just never been a big fan myself. So when people ask me, like, what do I do? Yeah, I mean, you can use this. Somebody just asked, can you use a grinder, like a grinder screen? You can really use anything that's got a fine enough screen to get the pollen out. But the thing is, you've got to be real careful. It's usually best to collect when the plant is still wet, because if it's dry, you're going to beat a bunch of material through and end up with green shit in your plant. The other thing is, what I'll usually do is, after the males I've collected every day and gone in and shaken him over the screen, when he's done doing his thing, I will then cut off all the flower clusters and just leave them on the screen and let them dry. And as they dry, they'll continue to drop pollen for another week or two just in your box. And as long as that's open, the box is open and it breathes well, then you're going to have a problem with it molding. It'll dry just like flour would, and it'll eventually just drop more pollen.
I agree, and I like that method. Yeah, it's the method I use now, but I can't say I didn't come from using flour in my pollen.
And here's the thing, like, I never got in the habit of it, and I tried it once or twice, and I think for me, I just couldn't ever really find a happy medium of how much pollen to flour. So I didn't think here's the real and the real of it, right? So a lot of people that are using collected pollen are smoking the rest of their flower. They're just dusting a couple little buds, unless you're maybe throwing it all over a room. That's not normally how I would do that. If I were collecting pollen and then using it, normally I'll pull my female out and away from the other plants. I'll dust a branch, just one branch with a paintbrush, and or 2 branches, and then I'll leave it for an hour. And I don't know, I made up an hour. It's arbitrary. I've had somebody else tell me they thought it took longer. I've used an hour as the marker, and it works. Like, it's worked for me, always 100%. So I let them do their thing for an hour. and then I spray the plant down with water. And what that'll do is it'll knock off any stray pollen that's sitting around so you don't go pollinate the rest of your room. And then you can just take your plant and put it right back in with the others, and you shouldn't have any problem with cross-contamination or seeds. So you can just pull one room out of a flower room and just make a couple seeds. And a lot of people that are collecting pollen, that's, you know, so that's the other reason that I was never fond of it, because I usually use my own pollen. And if I'm doing it like that, I don't really want to put a bunch of flour, which can be bacterial too, and it can kind of, it's like the whole using milk for powdery mildew. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard that trick, but it works. Like, if you have powdery mildew and you spray whole milk on it, it will kill it dead. Dead. Wouldn't recommend doing it a lot, but if you see one little spot late in flour and you spray it with a little bit of whole milk, it will get rid of the little bit of. But it is a bacterial nightmare because there's so much other stuff in milk. Now, there is great shit in milk that's bacterial, but spraying that on your flowers can really cause other issues like yeast development and, you know, other bacterial stuff that's not really great. Now, have I done that? Yeah, I did it once, you know, because I got a late stage PM problem back when back in the day. And it was like, it's late in flower. What do I do? I've only got a couple spots. It's not bad. I got a week or two to finish. Yeah. The whole milk got me to flower, but I would not have sprayed my whole room down with it and then let it. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't go.
That shit would have stinked anyway. But
exactly,
I tell you what,
get
man,
that stink.
I think the reason why I was doing it like that, because the area in Spain that I was living in at the time, it was just so freaking humid, bro. I could not dry for shit, bro. Like it man. I think I had one.
It's the same reason there's no green weed in Jamaica. It's because everything's so wet there, you can't dry anything, so everything ends up like browning in the drying process. Yeah, it's humidity.
It was a nightmare. I even bought into the hype of My Herb Now dryer. Yeah, you remember that? The My Herb Now dryer. He sold it, bro.
Yeah, it's just a dehydrator.
Bro, I tried it and tried it and tried it and tried it until I was like, fuck that. I'm hanging my shit. Like, and I've had so much better results with the hanger.
Yeah.
Hang dryer.
I mean, I'm from the deep south, so you're not telling me anything. Like, humidity's a bitch of life, you know. You know, it is.
All right, so we got a male, we got a female. They got together and they made babies, right? So when should the seeds be harvested? In my opinion, I think it takes between 5 to 7 weeks for seeds to mature.
I usually let them go the duration I would let the female go. So if it's a 10-week strain or a 9-week strain, that's usually what they take to really finish out the whole plant full of seeds.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your collection method? How are you collecting seeds? Are you drying it completely out and then just crunching it up, or what's your collection method when you harvest seeds?
I scooped. I felt like this was the score of the century, and maybe not. Maybe I've seen other options because I've seen like the big wooden contraption with the vacuum and the, you know. But like a couple years ago, the dude that runs Exotic Genetics made like this little tabletop unit. It's not that big, and it runs off a computer fan. And essentially, like, you plug it in. I think it was a limited run thing, and I don't think he did a ton of them. And I think it was more of like something he had talked about and, you know, maybe thought about producing. Did a small run of them, and I think it was $600 or $700. But it was the best $700 I ever spent in my whole life. So it's literally just a small tabletop contraption with a fan. You pour the seed in. It literally, the heavy stuff drops one way, the light stuff drops another way. And so I usually run the material twice. And by the second run, there's no brown seeds left. Now, before I had that, it was a headache. I'd usually use
That's like, what I was gonna say, yo.
Kitchen strainer.
I'm still doing it by hand.
mean,
Don't feel good anyway.
it's a headache. Yeah, it's a headache, and especially once you start to deal with it, on a bigger scale, it's a real headache.
No, for sure.
And like, it takes no time, and it plugs in. It's zero mess. It's really not a big messy thing.
Now,
And
are you
so,
crumbling the biomass up first, or are you just placing the buds in there?
yeah, no. You have to. It has to be powdered. It has to be dry. So it's usually by that point it's beat. But yeah, and it has to be like completely like dusted. But yeah, it's super easy.
Extra large pepperoni. So they still sell those. I need to check it out, bro, because doing it by hand is not
But if
fun.
he does, if
I
he
think
still
that's the
has
real
those,
trick there.
he might have made some more because I had a homie that reached out to me right after I got mine that asked me about it, and he
Yeah.
wanted to get one, and they were sold out. And he might have made some more because this is like I've had mine for like 2 years, but it was the best couple $100. I'll clean it up. It's a little bit of a mess right now just because, but I'll clean it
Yeah.
up. Somebody said show it to us. I'll clean it up one day and show it off. It's a neat little situation.
I was just gonna say, send me the link.
I'll
I
look at
want to
what
check it
it's
out.
called. It's got a brand on it. I'll look and see what it was called. I don't remember. The next thing that nobody really tells anybody is that you have to make sure your seeds are
Dry.
dry.
Gotta dry
Dry.
your seed.
And when I say dry, drier than the weed you would cure. Like, they got to be dry. Usually, depending on where you live, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks is usually your best, to make sure you don't have any moisture. Because once you start to put seeds in a jar, if there's any moisture left, you're going to have mold. As soon as you throw them in a jar of any kind, once again, they're just going to sprout mold and grow.
Nice. Thanks, Kenna Crafter. We appreciate that. If you drop it in the link, that'd be nice.
So if I could talk about one more thing, now that we're kind of I've made some seeds. I kind of have an idea how to make seeds. I kind of want to do something with my seeds. While we got a few minutes, man, I kind of want to talk about what it essentially comes down to: marketing, branding, finding your niche on the internet, finding customers, finding people that want to grow your seeds, and then making something of the seeds that you've made. Right. The other thing is, once we talk about pollen suckers, I don't feel anybody is a lower class citizen because they make seeds and decide they want to sell some. The notion that you should be held up because what some chat on the internet says, or because somebody on a forum said you shouldn't do something or should do something, push all that bullshit out of the way, man. Listen, nobody's going to pay your bills. Nobody's going to do you. If you want to make seeds and you want to sell some seeds, get out there and make some seeds and sell some seeds, man. I'll
No one
buy
can
some
tell you
seeds.
different.
Like, there's a million people doing it, and if you're passionate about it and it's your niche, get out there and do it. Don't let anybody be the hang up that talks you down or says you shouldn't. You should follow some only chat on the internet said you should do it this way and not that way. Find your space, do you. The seed world is only going to get bigger and more interesting and more flavorful. And for anybody to hate and say that somebody's wrong because they want to pay their bills, man, nobody's paying your bills for you. Do you. Now, that being said, the best thing I could tell you is in this industry, in this business, resilience and longevity is key. Making sure that you can do it and do it and do it for a while is key. And making sure that you find a brand and branding for yourself that you're happy with and that you're going to work with for long term. That's just like selling yourself on this platform for anything else. If you were selling lotion or bath bombs or little resin sculptures of your wiener, whatever the fuck it is, like get out there and get up, but find a branding, pick a logo, pay an artist $200 to make you a logo. Like, there's tons of great logo artists out there. Don't take any from those logo companies that are just showing up in everybody's inbox. Like, if you need a suggested logo designer that does good work, hit me up and I'll tell you one or two. But like, and find something that you like. Start a social media page, become prolific, spread your branding out. You know, there's 100 different platforms. Have a page on all of them. You know, that's the thing I learned the hard way, was getting on Instagram and only Instagram and not spreading out. So once the great wipe came and everybody got knocked off, you know, I was kind of fucked. And I've since learned, like, you know, that's what this video here is. This is essentially what this is just spreading everything out a little bit and making sure we have all kinds of different. You can find us anywhere anywhere you get social media or media.
Yep. Yeah, man. Follow me on YouTube, man, at the Real Mac Blunts, man. Mr. Mac Blunts on YouTube. We post this as well as Turkfiends YouTube.com, and we upload the videos if you want to go back and rewatch if you miss something, man. Caramel grape donuts make me talk slow, so I apologize, y'all.
Yeah, I tell everybody like this, man. If you heard anything here that resonated with you, that you thought was real, if anything here that you liked, that worked for you, go tell a friend. You know, we both have social media pages, but on the other side, like, you know, we're doing these to kind of put knowledge out for people. And the more people that pick up on it, and the more that these things get shared, the more that people are going to get these tips and these points, and these things are going to get sliced up, and people are going to say, see, I told you this is, you know, and, you know, we both sell seeds, but the reality is this is a passion, and we're doing this because it's fun, but it's also a way for us to get our brands out there in front of people, you know?
Yep. We both live regular lives just like y'all, man. We take time out of our days to do this for y'all, so we appreciate y'all tuning in, and we appreciate you giving it to you, because it's our passion. It's what we love to do. So thank y'all.
You can always find my seeds at turkfiend.com, www.terpfi3nd.com. We just dropped Valentine's Day mystery bags. I don't know that there's a better deal out there. It's $100. You essentially get between 3 and 10 packs of seeds. So somebody's going to get the lucky 10 pack. When we did 60 this time, so there may be 2 or 3 that get 10 packs for their $100. But you're guaranteed to get at least $200 worth of seeds. So you're going to get double your money no matter what. And it's all seeds from across my whole line, from Lucky Charms to the Blackout Truffle, Nag Champa. There's a little bit of everything. It's literally just a mash of all of my gear. It's the best deal on the planet.
What better way to tell someone you love them than to give them the gift of terps?
My amazing wife has done all of these Valentine's Day bags and gone out of her way to make all these awesome looking Valentine's bags. So it's a great, if you got a loved one out there that's into seeds, you know, there's no better gift.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, Terp don't even know this though, but one of those lucky bags will contain caramel grape donuts too, man. So go grab that. Go grab that.
Nice. Yeah, we're also doing 10 of the bags, I think, are going to get a golden ticket, which can be redeemed for another free pack of seeds on the site. So it's a deal. It's a deal no matter how you slice it. But yeah, check it out, man. We always got gear. I got gear for days. We got another drop coming up in a couple months. Another pineapple sorbet drop. We just dropped the Lucky Charms drops. That's Bodie's. These are kind of heirloom seeds out of my collection. We did some F2s. We did some crosses. Like, I got gear for days, man. If you're looking for flavors, any point in time, hit me up, hit Mac up. Man, all we do is dank, you know?
That's why we got the dank and we talk about it, because we got the dank.
We got 10 minutes left, cuz.
You want to open it up for questions? Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? We didn't talk about storing and labeling.
Well, we kind of did. We talked about post-processing. Past that, you got to keep pollen dry. As far as pollen goes, I'm not a big fan of the freezer, but I will keep pollen in the fridge. So what I usually do is go into vials with pollen. I'll go into vials and then into my Mylars. Like, I send my seeds out so I can vac seal them, and then they just go in the fridge. I pretty much pop it when it's ready to use, and I recommend that's how you handle it. Fridge, keep cool. Any heat, any moisture will ruin it. Seeds, storage long term. I don't like the fridge. I don't like the freezer. I don't. I'm just too much moisture for me for seeds. If they were in an absolutely sealed container, you have to take when you take them out, they have to stay like at room temp before you open them, or you create moisture. But man, man,
I have a
I
different
just keep them in
opinion,
a Tupperware.
but I I have a different opinion, and mine is in reverse. So the reason why I put mine in the freezer and not the fridge is because every time you open the fridge, you're bringing in fresh air, moisture, and I think in a refrigerator it's more moisture. I'd rather freeze the pollen, and I've had success with long-term storage of pollen in the freezer.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. I mean, with pollen, I don't necessarily mind if it's going to be long-term storage. Yeah, the freezer's fine. Yeah, I don't necessarily hate the freezer for that. For seed storage, I'm not fond of the fridge or the freezer at all.
Oh, yes, yes. The
There's
seed
just too much
storage, no,
moisture in
no,
general.
I don't.
But with
Yeah, I
pollen,
don't.
like I said, with pollen, it's usually at that point it's sealed. It's in a sealed container, in a
Yeah,
sealed vial, in a sealed bag,
right.
yeah. It's like,
It's
and
mummified.
that's all done in a warm place, or in an air temp place. So it's like I'm not as worried about that. But with
No,
seeds, I don't like fridge. I don't like freezer. Something happens to your fridge or freezer, and the power goes out. It gets real moist in there quick. I just like a Tupperware somewhere cool. Got a basement somewhere dry. Make sure
and
it's
I,
dry.
I like to keep my seeds in the dark as well too. But that
Yeah.
can be accomplished by just by putting them in a shoebox. I'm old school. I still have my seeds in a shoebox. You know.
Yeah, I have totes. I have Tupperwares. I have large containers full of seeds. I have totes full of
Do you
envelopes
cold
of people that
treat your
sent me
seeds
seeds. Like I
or
have so
post
many seeds.
pre-harvest?
It's painful and ridiculous.
Can a crafter? I don't know what that is, brother. I would love for a terp or somebody to explain to me what do you cold treat your seeds or plants pre-harvest. I don't know what that is.
Uh, I mean, I'm guessing you're talking about two different things. So, like, some people will cold shock their plants into kind of post harvest. So once you are ready to start flushing, or you're in your
Okay.
last couple of days, they'll either put ice on top of their plant, on top of the soil or
Yeah.
medium, and then water that, and it just makes your entire what you're watering super cold. Or I've heard of other people, like, in order to sell seeds, what they'll do, or before they're ready to use them, is they'll put them in the freezer as like a treatment to like shock them, I guess. I guess the notion is maybe it makes them want to germinate, or I never really understood the logic behind it. I don't do anything
I
like
do some
that.
research.
Once they're dry, I've heard of it, and it's something that I've heard people mention through the years, but it's not something that, like, for me, I really have ever had a practical use for. So I don't personally do it. Pretty much, they come down, they get dried to a crisp. Once they're dry, they go in packaging, and they go out, and everything gets germ tested immediately. Like, not immediately, but once they're dry, before they
Yeah.
kind of go into post packaging and production, everything gets germ tested. If I don't get 90, 100%, they usually don't go out unless it's just something, somebody in particular wants. Like, if I have anything that doesn't germinate well, it just doesn't get used. But I don't
Please
really have a
don't
lot of
tell.
problems with that. Like, I tend to use super vigorous plants. So I don't really have a lot of problems with germination issues unless it's older stuff. And once it kind of
Right.
goes out of your hands, it's tough to really say that somebody else handles it properly up until, but for me, somebody hits me up and says, "Hey man, I had a problem with these seeds." The first thing I usually do, if it's a germination problem, the first thing I ask them is, what's your process? I'll replace any seeds if somebody has an issue. But the thing that I like to do at that point is kind of walk them through my method for popping seeds. And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, we get 100% every time. Like,
Sure.
so for me, 48 hours soak. 24 hours. I tap them. They drop 24 more hours. At that point, 90% of my seeds are popped and ready to go into your rooter cubes, or if you really want, you can put them into, baggies and paper towels and grow them out a little bit more. But, once I usually walk people through my method of germination, we almost have 100% no matter what. So if somebody has a problem, seeds are living things. It's one of those things that, like, anything can happen depending on where the seeds are going in the world, how they got there, how they were handled at the post office,
So that was my next question, bro. So I created this strand back in 2016 called Roadkill Pie, and it was one of my favorite strands, bro. But from the trip from Spain back here, I'm having a hard time germinating them because I want to repopulate them, and I'm just having a tough time. They won't pop. What would you recommend?
Like, what, you haven't gotten any of them pop?
No,
Like,
man,
what percentage? Nothing.
nothing.
How many do you have left?
Man, I probably have about 100, maybe. I just stopped playing with them, bro.
Yeah, so at that point, it's just a numbers game. So one thing you can do, you can kind of do like a light hydrogen peroxide soak, because that's going to deal with any pathogens. Kind of a dilute hydrogen peroxide to start with.
Okay.
Do a small batch like that. You can scuff them up a little bit. Like, you can kind of take like sandpaper, just kind of rub them against some sandpaper and kind of scuff the outsides.
Clarification. Yeah.
And what that'll do is help you get moisture into the seed past the seed hole, and essentially get to a point where you're getting moisture inside the seed.
Yeah.
And that's usually going to be your biggest problem. If they're not super old, the other issue is maybe they got wet at some point or something like that.
See, me thinking them coming across on the containers, I was thinking the temperature from going extreme hot to extreme cold to extreme, being on the sea. I think that damaged the seeds, in my opinion. But
could
it's
have,
a strand.
if you've got that many, it's just a numbers game, man. Yeah. We're down to our last minute or so, dog. A huge thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight. These numbers are going up each week of people that are tuning in, and I've been making my page public before we go live so that people can kind of join, and whether they don't have to join my page, they can just watch the show. But anybody wants, you can watch these at any point after I pin them to my page. I think Mac usually puts them on his page, or my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/@terpfiend, TERPFI3ND. What was your YouTube page, Mac?
It's Mr. Mac Blunts. Search Mr. Mac Blunts. You'll find it on YouTube. But if you click on my link tree in the profile picture, it'll take you to it as well.
Same, my page, my Instagram page has got all my link tree and all that good stuff. If anybody here, if any of you guys enjoy any of this, man, go tell a friend. It really helps us to get the word of the page out there. And we're going to keep doing these every week, whether anybody tunes in and enjoys them or not. So hopefully they talk to somebody and somebody enjoys some of this. Each of these, I feel like we put down some really good knowledge, and it's really good stuff. So, anything else you got, Mac?
I think I'm good, brother.
Appreciate it, guys. A huge thanks to everybody. Once again, go get a Valentine's Day mystery bag.
Thank you.
Hit Mac up and get some seeds. And you guys take it easy, man. We'll see you on Saturday for the next OG chat. Peace.